So welcome to this new discussion. The topic is how to add a new node to your 11G release 2 cluster. So I'm assuming that currently you have a 2 node cluster in place. So at present you have a 2 node rack with nodes as SA alpha and SA beta hosting a database RACDB with instances as RACDB1 and RACDB2 running respectively on SA alpha and SA beta. Objective of this session is to add a new node, say SA gamma, to your cluster and also create RACDB3 instance on this node. So this is the objective of this session. So I am going to add a new node SA gamma to your clusterware, and once we have this node successfully plugged in into your existing cluster, then I am going to add the third instance of your database RACDB3 onto this new node. Like with the fresh installation, most of the steps are same. Ensure that your operating system is certified, compatible, and the patch set levels of this new node match to that of your existing nodes. So what I have done in this case, I have cloned your beta node. Remember, we are using a virtual machine setup. So we are in a 2 node cluster, the second node as SA beta. I cloned over SA beta as SA gamma, while rest of my clusterware is still down. And before I did the cloning, rather after I did the cloning, I took a cold snapshot of your existing infrastructure so that at the end of it you can always revert back to what it was. So let me quickly show you what I have done so far. So I am logging on to the vSphere infrastructure, and once I am in, I will show you how I have initiated a clone of it and how I took a snapshot of it before. So here's the infrastructure. Alpha, beta and DNS machines are still intact. Then we have SA gamma, which is currently up and running. Remember, SA gamma is a clone of the beta machine, and as of now, if I go to snapshot manager, I can see before add node is my current snapshot. As of now, after the snapshot, all these three machines are down, and I won't power it on until I successfully configure gamma by doing the necessary prerequisite task of changing the identity, changing the IP addresses, so on and so forth. So I have powered on the cloned over machine, and now I am getting into it. So since it's a clone, do I need to worry about operating system certification, compatibility and patch set level? So it's all the same as that of beta. But in real life, your machine would be freshly installed from some image, and ensure that the image that you use is in all respects, means the kernel version, the patch set compatibility and the packages installed match to what you have on the existing machine. The second point also talks about the packages. Since I never created this machine right from the scratch, I need not worry about the development libraries which is anyways installed in case of beta, and my machine is just a clone over of beta. I need not worry about ASM lib software installation that we have done during the initial configuration of a 2 node cluster. So it's all already there on my third node gamma. I need not worry about operating system limits because I have cloned over beta. All those limits must have been copied from beta to here. I need not worry about the kernel parameters because the machine beta already has those necessary kernel parameters in place. IP assignment and cabling, since I am talking about a virtual infrastructure, I need not really worry about. But by this I mean your public NIC must have the same name. Your public and private NICs must have the same name. So for example, if on alpha and beta my public NIC is ETH0, then on the third node to be added, ETH0 must be your public interface. On your existing machines, if ETH1 is your private interconnect, then on the new node to be added, ETH1 must be the name of your private interconnect. Remember why we need this. During the installation, on one of the screen it prompts you, tell me, is it ETH0 which is a public, private or do not use kind of an interface? And what is the purpose of ETH1? Public, private or do not use. So the purpose of a NIC is associated with the name right at the beginning. So we know whenever we talk about in our setup ETH0, ETH0 in our case now is a public interface. Whenever we talk about ETH1, ETH1 now indicates as a private interface. So you can't swap those interfaces on the new node to be added now. So if ETH0 is public on existing setup, then the new node must also have ETH0 as the public interface. If on your existing setup ETH1 is your private interconnect, then on the new node ETH1 must also play the same role. So name wise the purpose should match, and accordingly the cabling should be done. Remember, public NICs are connected to the public infrastructure, which is a routable network which has a gateway assigned to it, whereas a private network is a non-routable network, so it does not have a gateway associated with. So plug those cables in appropriate switches. Obviously this would be taken care by your network admin. Then comes the DNS resolution part. Ensure that on gamma you use a consistent etc file which is required for the DNS resolution. So ensure it's in all respect is as good as your etc file that on alpha and on beta. The operating system should be able to see the LUNs. Well, I am not reached to this level, so I am going to address all these concerns. So here I am on beta. The first thing I'm going to do is change over my identity. See here, since it's a clone of beta, at every place it is showing me values of that of beta. If I say if config -a, since it's a clone, IP address has been obtained from DHCP automatically. Well, I don't want a DHCP enabled IP address and so on and so forth. So let me launch the network configuration utility in Red Hat Linux NIT, and I can see there are backup interfaces since it's a clone. Deactivate all of them. Once all of them show you status as inactive, delete the ones that are with the name .bak. So I am deleting the ones that have a name as .bak. So now I am left with only two choices, both inactive. ETH0 which is supposed to be my public interface and ETH1 which is supposed to be my private interconnect. I am editing the configuration of each one of them, and then I would also ensure so as to fit in my window. I have made those top title bar and the bottom task bar uh, with those show hide buttons enabled. Now I am going to assign an IP address. Now if you see, in our case, SA alpha is 172.168.202.2. SA beta is 172.168.202.4, and then SA gamma would be 172.168.202.6. Now I'm not picking up these numbers out of the blue. We already made a provision for these IP addresses during our DNS configuration. So ensure that the IPs are published for the public IP and the virtual IP of the new node to be added in your DNS, and DNS should be able to resolve those IPs. So in line with what I have set, I am going to set the IP address for the new node to be added. And I added the IP address of my gateway. Remember, public network is a routable network. Or too many of them. On the similar lines, I am going to put in the static IP address, which is 192.168.202.6, which is a class C network. And remember, this is a non-routable network as such. Once done, I am going to activate it. Before that, I go to the DNS tab and then I mention the name as SA gamma. I know that this is not the correct DNS server's IP. I should be using my own DNS server with no secondary DNS mentioned as such. Host names do not give me a correct picture, so I am going to erase it off and put in the correct values here. This is the fully qualified domain name and this is the short name. Once I am done, I jump onto the devices tab and I try to activate ETH1 and 2. It automatically prompts me to save the configuration. Once done, I check what's my host name. Although in the current command prompt it is showing you beta, but my host name I can identify from the host name command is correctly showing as SA gamma. I check what's there in my etc host file. So this is correct, 172.168.202.6. If I check the IP address of my public interface, it is 172.168.202.6. If I check the IP address of my private interconnect, it's 192.168.202.6. So configuration wise, from the name and IP identities wise, my machine seems to be in line with my requirement. Now to get rid of this particular name, I would take my machine to init level 1 or quickly I would reboot it. So next time when it comes up, it will pick up the correct name. Remember, this is a clone of beta, so cluster where the ASM instance, the database instance is all up rather configured, but it will never come up because my LUNs cannot be accessed from this machine. My DNS server is down. OHSD will never be able to start, so on and so forth. So I am going to erase off those identities. I am going to get rid of whatever was installed to ensure that this looks exactly the same as that of a freshly installed machine server. So I was not happy with the name that it was coming in the command prompt, the host name. So I am restarting it. So after restart, it should pick up all new identifiers for the new node. So instead of beta, now it should report you as gamma. So I am looking at what is that it is trying to do now. Now ETH0 and ETH1 would come up with no problem. It won't be able to log in to the ISCSI targets because my IQN number is not matching, and more than that, my ISCSI target itself is down. My DNS server is not up and running, the NetApp filer is not up and running, So target is unavailable as of now, and since target is unavailable, it's not going to uh, do a successful login. However, to come to know that my targets are unavailable, it keeps on trying for some time, and after that it gives up, and then it will try to launch OHSD, which is triggered via init tab. So once my machine is up and running, it will take some time so before it identifies it as a hard failure, and once it comes out of that mode, I am going to change my IQN identifiers. I will start my DNS machine. I will ensure that I can see the LUNs. I would ensure that my uh, ASM lib can identify those shared LUNs as if they are provisioned disks. I will ensure that none of my previous installation traces are available, basically getting rid of all the files that are already there on my machine. So I will get rid of each one of those configurations, and once done, we'll be ready to plug in this node into your clusterware. So while this is on, let me power on my DNS machine, and once it's powered on, I would start the NetApp filer simulator on it, which acts as a storage, and then I would also power on alpha and beta. In the meanwhile, I will try to rectify the settings from gamma. So while my machine is stuck for some time here, I don't have any other option but to wait until it times out. So it has timed out after some time, and now it has come to the login prompt. Once I am in and I open the terminal, all uh, identifiers as such, host name, IP address, everything is set. So what I just did is just to assign the correct IP addresses. So I need not worry about anything up till here. This part is already taken care of. What I'm not sure about is my etcresolve.conf file in line with what I have it on DNS, alpha and beta. Most of the time this file is messed up. After the IP address configuration, I will ensure I put in the correct values in etcresolve.conf. So here I'm on gamma. Is that what you want in this file? You want the name server, and I believe you want one more entry, that is search, isn't it? So you need mention the name of the domain, name of the name server, the timeout, and attempts. So one of it is timeout, the another one is attempts. So I ensure that it's in line with whatever I have on alpha, beta and DNS. I will quickly verify if that's the case. By now my DNS server should have been up and running. So let me try to connect to my DNS server. So I had a search entry, I had a name server, I had options attempts equal to 2 and options timeout is equal to 1. I should follow the same order because it will try to check those settings from the other machines as well. So I would ensure that I put in pretty much the same setup here. I asked you to delete this part since this is not required, since we are not using a GNS configuration, and I asked you to put a somewhat higher value here. I will ensure that I have a similar configuration on each of the other nodes. So my etc resolve.conf is now inline. Let's quickly check if I can resolve the names using the DNS. So I could resolve the name using DNS in this case. So I could go to the DNS server and query the name of SA Gamma. It has written me an IP address 192.168.202.6. If I query upon the virtual IP address, it gives me the virtual IP address. That means everything is coming from the DNS as of now without any problem. So let me quickly erase my identity now. To be able to access iSCSI LUNs, I must change my IQN number. So I am changing my IQN number assuming that it was Gamma. If I am not sure, I could have checked this from the NetApp filer simulator and then I would have put those entries here. But I am assuming, since we are all following a standard naming convention, the IQN identity of beta node is SA beta, then I assume that it would be SA gamma onto the NetApp filer simulator. Not to take a chance against, I am logging on to the DNS server and I would start the NetApp filer simulator. Remember, you should start the NetApp filer simulator in a console, so that even if a putty session crashes, your console, or for that matter your NetApp session, can still be preserved. So here I have started the NetApp filer simulator, which acts as a SAN in our case. In the meanwhile, I will ensure that all entry points are erased. I will quickly revisit this file once I am up and running. In the meanwhile, your OHASD is triggered via init tab. So I am going to init tab and deleting the last line which triggers the Oracle high availability service daemon. So I am erasing this line, deleting it from Gamma machine. So during next startup, it will never attempt for starting up of OHASD. So I have erased from init tab OHASD. I am going to etc init.d and querying for scripts called as star HAS star, which is nothing but OHASD daemon, and init.ohasd daemon. Simply removing the entry from init tab would not be sufficient. I must also get rid of those scripts from etc init.d directory. Well, I got rid of those scripts now. I must go to etc and delete all of these files. Oracle is a directory. Ora tab is the file where database entries are kept. Ora-nst.loc is the inventory pointer file. So I must get rid of each of them, because I want to remove all traces of Oracle's installation on this machine, which I have never done on Gamma. It was done on beta. Since it's a cloned over image, so everything was copied in as is. I go to U02 and I don't need any of it. I don't need APP, grid, none of those RPMs are required. Everything is all in line with a requirement, with the requirement of that of a fresh machine. So I'm getting rid of everything. In the meanwhile, I'm logging on to the NetApp filer and I'm using the command igroup show, which is for iSCSI initiator groups. Who are the members? So I could see my IQN identity was SAGAMMA. This is what exactly I have put in to the etc iSCSI initiator name.iSCSI file. So one thing is for sure, that I am using the correct identity. I can see whether or not my LUNs are online, read write and mapped. So all the LUNs are online, read write and mapped. I'm checking, is my iSCSI server running. So the iSCSI server on NetApp side is running. This iSCSI service will act as a iSCSI target, whereas my gamma, alpha and beta machines would act like a iSCSI initiator. Well, I got rid of my previous installation. So this machine now is as good as a fresh machine. I am changing the ownership of that of your U02 recursively. So everything is now being owned by Oracle DBA. This is as good as a fresh installation. So my machine with a mount point is ready. So I am going to the home directory of Oracle user. If there are any other files, I don't need any one of them, but there's no harm even if I keep them, because I don't have to otherwise create a fresh DB env, grid env once I have grid. So as of now, none of those services are running. Now let me quickly restart the iSCSI service because I have changed the IQN identifier. So I am using service iSCSI restart, obviously as the root user. So it says restarted the iSCSI service. Let's see if I can see the LUNs using lscsi command. I can see all the LUNs SDB, SDC, SDD, SDE, all of them are LUNs. Can I see the equivalent device names for them? So I can see the device names as SDB, SDB1 is the first partition in it, SDC, SDC1 as the first partition in it, device is SDD, SDD1 is the first partition in it, SDE, the first partition in it is SDE1. So all of those devices at the operating system level are visible. What I do not have is I cannot still see the disks. Remember, Oracle ASM was started first and then the LUNs are visible. So Oracle lib library daemons was started first, scanned it for the devices. By then there were no LUNs, so it couldn't successfully scan it. After that the LUNs are visible. So to be able to see those, I must say scan disks. After which I say list disks. All my ASM disks are now visible. So my machine is as good as a fresh machine now, ready to be plugged in. However, there are some cosmetic tasks that are still remaining. I will power on alpha beta and I will ensure that I can do passwordless SSH access between alpha, beta and gamma. So I am going to Oracle user and I am removing the .ssh folder because this was a signature copied over from beta. I don't want that copied over signature. I don't want those private keys and public keys that of a beta. So I got rid of my own SSH public and private keys. I would generate a fresh one for gamma using RSA token. I didn't provide any of the responses with the default enter. I accepted all defaults. I go to .ssh and I can now see my public and a private uh, RSA tokens are generated. Now I would power on alpha and beta. In the meanwhile, let's go through our plan. So ensure that your etcresolve.conf is in line with your existing machines. The operating system should be able to see those LUNs and ASM should be able to see those disks. So I ensured that my iSCSI identifier is same as that of what I have mapped onto the NetApp filer for LUN masking. Then I change it into the file etc iSCSI. I restarted the iSCSI daemon. iSCSI should auto start and ASM lib should be automatically loaded. If not, run it or reboot the machine. Next time it will automatically pick it up. If you don't want to reboot, then ensure that you restart the iSCSI service and then you also scan for ASM disks. Machines should all be time synced, meaning NTP should be configured. This we have done during the initial setup. If not, I will quickly verify. Is it still the case on Gamma? Remember the options that we put into the ntp.conf file. So it's already enabled with a sliving option. So I need not worry about NTP now. So my machine is time synced with the rest of the machines in the world. This is what we are planning to do now. We'll ensure that we enable passwordless SSH access between alpha, beta and gamma, copying over those signatures from all of them into one file called as authorized underscore keys. Once I have my authorized underscore keys, well, I don't need any longer the DNS server access or for that matter the NetApp filer simulator. So I am closing this session while keeping my NetApp filer up and running. I ensured that mount point wise I am using the same mount point /u02. Well, I need not worry because I have cloned it from beta. So everything is in line with what was available on beta. I don't need this machine any longer, the session to the DNS. However, I would need two sessions, one for alpha and one for beta. I would ensure that the etc result.conf file is in line with the rest of the machine. If not, I would quickly change it. I would open a session to beta. So I ensured on all the machines etc result.conf file is just the same. On all the machines now I need to enable a passwordless SSH access. So I am going to the .ssh folder on alpha and from gamma I would copy the public key to the authorized key file on alpha. So now alpha has a signature of alpha, alpha has a signature of beta and alpha has a signature of gamma. I will ensure the same file is copied to beta and gamma. So I said scp copy this file to no password prompted because alpha and beta were anyways passwordless wise setup wise they were already in place, the configuration settings. I am doing it for gamma. For the first time access it will ask me the password. Now I want to quickly verify can they all do a SSH passwordless access to each other. So here I am on alpha. I said SSH SA beta hostname, no password prompted. To SA gamma, no password prompted. To SA alpha, no password prompted. Pretty much I am going to run these three tests from all the machines. So I am going to run the same test from beta now. No password prompted. First time warning, next time no password prompted. No password prompted. I am going to run the same test from gamma machine. So I am doing SSH. I am doing SSH to beta. Next time no warning, no password prompted. I am doing it to myself. First time warning, next time no password prompted. I am doing it to alpha. First time warning, next time no password prompted. So all SSH settings are in place. All nodes can talk to each other without being prompted for the SSH password, user password. Make sure the SAN is visible from the new node. I need not do this because my machine is a clone of beta and I already established the target, and the target's IQN number is all established. That's why I can see from gamma, since I am able to see the lens, I need not do this. Why I mentioned this one? Assuming that you have created a fresh machine, then in that case you will have to obtain the target's IQN number and also you have to perform a login. If gamma node is a clone of your alpha or beta node, then you must also clean the machine. See here, use neat, delete the backup nicks, correct the IP address, host name, remove these files. We are already taken care of removing Aura tab, Oracle folder and aura-inst.loc. Carefully edit init tab line and delete the line that calls the ohasd daemon. We are already taken care. Go to the etc init.d and delete OHAS related script. We are already taken care of this one. Go to U002 or U02 and delete everything that appears under it. Edit your ISKG initiator, change it to the name of gamma. Remove the SSH folder and remove from USR local bin certain files. So here I am under USR local bin. So you have C Aura env, DB home and Aura env. Remove all of them. Now my machine is like as good as a fresh machine, which I never used it, except for the fact that in var TMP there would be a .oracle hidden folder. We don't care. Change the ownership recursively to Oracle DBA for U002 mount point. So all done, all set now. So it's all looking good. So gamma machine is now as good as a fresh machine ready to be plugged in. Let's see what's the status on alpha and beta. Is my cluster up and running? Yes. So instead of cloning over RACDB, I am going to clone over test. To ensure that my test is added into Aura tab file, so I can see my test database is added into Aura tab file instead of doing it for RACDB, which is down. So otherwise I will have to shut it down, bring it up, so on and so forth. So understand now. Now the actual step. This is when the environment is handed over to a DBA. Starting from this point onwards, it's all a DBA's job to plug in that node to your cluster. The first one is extend the grid infrastructure software to include a new node. Before I do this, let's see what's the matter of my grid infrastructure. So I said for grid infrastructure, well, I didn't mention the Oracle home, which I should have. The grid infrastructure home is made up of two node setup. So idea is to plug in the new node so that my OPatch LS inventory going forward for grid home shows me that it's a 3 node setup. Another problem is there are two nodes reported by OLS nodes. The public node names are SA alpha, SA beta respectively. The node numbers are 1 and 2. Their virtual IP addresses are SA alpha VIP, SA beta VIP, and the node status is showing as unpinned. Let's not worry about pinned and unpinned as of now. So I want going forward, the third node should also be reported as part of the command's output. But because I do not have grid infrastructure installed on the new node, I don't see the new node reportedly in the output. This is what is the objective now. Run the cluster verify utility from any of the existing nodes in your cluster. So I am going to run from grid home bin cluster verify stage pre node add hyphen n followed by name of the new node to be added. So here I am on alpha. I am setting the environment to that of my grid home, and then I would run cluster verify utility with stage as pre node add with the new node name given as one of the parameter as SA gamma. So it will do pre-RAC checks. The way we have done prior to the grid infrastructure software installation, we ran cluster verify stage pre CRS INST. So that time it was pre CRS INST prior to cluster installation. This time it is prior to node addition. So it's going and verifying for the new node. Is everything looking good for that new node to be added? So it's checking limits, kernel parameters, packages, the operating system architecture, free memory, whether or not Oracle user is present with the necessary group settings, whether or not I have sufficient space in the TMP file system. So it says pre-check node addition was unsuccessful, and if I check what is that has failed, it's only one thing, that it was unable to determine on the new node SA gamma if there is ASM disk 1 that we have already verified manually. Now question is why this check has failed. There is supposed to be one RPM installed on that machine which comes with you on your installation disk. That RPM we haven't installed. So if I go to alpha in your software stage location, I don't know where is your software. I believe under APP stage grid. This RPM should have been installed on that machine. Only then it would have been able to do the check. But other than that check, which I know why it failed, all other checks have passed, which means my node is in line with the requirement of whatever it needs to be there prior to plugging in that node. If I would have installed this RPM on gamma, it would haven't even complained about it. So let me copy and reissue the checks to ensure if this is the real cause of failure. It is reportedly showing that the package is already installed. So it was somehow still unable to determine, but I know for sure that those disks are already there in place. Somehow it was unable to determine it. So ignore that error. Go ahead. That's the only failure that we have. Ignore any errors such as check of voting disk has failed. So I don't know why it is reportedly still showing it as a failure. Well, I don't have any intention to fix it. If I go to Metalink and try to find out if there is a known issue with this one, I may come up with a workaround probably, or with a real life fix as to how to ignore this error. Now run add node.sh to add the new node to your cluster. This has to be run from existing node. So I need to run it from any of the existing node. Since one of the pre-RAC check has failed, it won't allow me to proceed. Let's do it. So from grid home OUI bin on alpha, I am going to run this particular setup. So here I am on alpha. I am going to Oracle home OUI bin. Note that my OUI, Oracle home is set to grid home. And now I am running the command. So I said from grid home OUI bin, add node, cluster new node is SA gamma, cluster new virtual host name is SA gamma VIP, and since I am doing it in a putty command line console, I said do it silently. If I don't do it silently, anyways it will not spawn any GUI wizard, but it expects the display variable to be set. Since I do not have a display in this case, I am running it with silent option. And I expect it to fail because one of the pre-add node check wasn't successful. So it will complain about the same thing here, saying I'm not happy with the way you have set up the node. I don't see an ASM disk there. So it might fail. If for some pre-rec checks that you know is quite fixable, and or is probably that it's reporting it as failed, but although things are there in place, if you think otherwise, prior to running this command, export an environment variable saying ignore pre-add node checks equal to y. Then in that case it will still proceed even when it comes across that certain prereqs are not in place. Since I am doing it silently, I don't know what is that it is examining there. But our anticipation is, since not all the pre-cluster verification checks were successful, it has failed. See here. But since I ran it in a silent mode, I do not know for what reason it is failing. So the best thing is to run it in a GUI so that I don't have to put that hyphen silent. And since I am not putting hyphen silent, the failures will be evident and will be displayed on my screen. So let me open a console, GUI console for alpha. Or set it to some VNC location, whatever it is. If you don't want, because normally in real life you won't be having the liberty of opening a console. Let me do it something more realistic. So I said VNC server, assign a password. Once the password is assigned and VNC is started, set it as a display. So I am saying export display is equal to this one. Now I can run it without silent so that at least I will understand what's going wrong. So this time I didn't put any hyphen silent option there. Now see, everything is verbose on screen. So it says performing pre-checks for node addition, checking node reachability, passed, checking user equivalence, passed. Most of the things would pass except for one thing. That is, it was unable to determine if the machine gamma has access to ASM disk. So memory check passed, TMP passed, UID passed, operating system limits passed, kernel parameters, all of them are showing status as passed. Packages, we have all the packages in place. It says OCR integrity passed, cluster voting disk passed. This is what is not working in our case. Other than this, all other checks have passed. The only thing it is not able to determine is this. Check of voting disk, ORCL, ASM disk failed on the following nodes. On which node it is failing? On gamma. That is the new node to be added. But since we have ASM lib installed, ASM lib should have been able to access those disks and should have been able to confirm that yes, I am able to see the voting days. But this check has failed from gamma node, and that's where it's not very happy about. That's what it says, unsuccessful. And even if one check fails, it won't proceed. Okay, we have a workaround. So I am saying ignore pre-add node checks. I am exporting this as one of the environment variables. Once I am done, I am rerunning as add node. This time it has ignored all those checks and it is directly proceeding by copying the software to the gamma node. See here, performing test to see whether alpha, beta and gamma nodes are available, done, so on and so forth. Now I am going to gamma in the meanwhile to find out what is the progress of software copy. See here, see the grid folder. So it's automatically copying the grid folder from alpha machine to gamma machine, that is the new node to be added. Now due to our infrastructure challenges, we'll see that it's somewhat slow. Ideally it's a small software, it doesn't take that long to copy it. There's no point watching it go from 0 to 100%. So I am putting a pause on this video momentarily. So now the 2.9 GB of grid infrastructure software has been copied, and here I am on to alpha where I initiated the command to add node. It has come to a place where it says everything is done, 100% done, saving of inventory is done. Now it says the configuration script needs to be executed as root user in each cluster node. Now in each cluster node means the one that is given below. So I need to run root.sh on gamma from the grid home. It's just like the way we did during our initial installation. To execute this, open a new terminal window on gamma, login as root and run the script. The cluster node addition U02 grid was successful. You can check the logs here. So like for any fresh setup that we have done initially on a 2 node alpha beta, it asks at the end of grid infrastructure installation to run root.sh, which creates OLR, OCR, valet, creates the grid plug and play, GIPC daemon, adds entry into etc init tab for OHSD startup, copies the OHSD startup related scripts into etc init.d, creates etc oracle folder, creates aura tab file, creates aura inst inventory pointer location, sets up the inventory, starts up the daemons, creates your ASM instance, checks the voting days, joins the cluster. At the end it will say everything is up and running on gamma. After which, if I say oracle home opatch ls inventory hyphen oracle home, which is in my case U02 grid, it shows now grid home is on 3 nodes. Although my root.sh is still in progress, at the end of it I should see ASM instance 3 up and running on that new machine. So what we have done in phase A, that is to extend the grid infrastructure software to include the new home, after which I said run root.sh. Once done, you can run a step for your confirmation. It's not mandatory though. Post node addition verifications from any of the existing nodes in your cluster. You can run cluster verify stage post node add. Remember earlier it was pre node add and followed by the node name of the new node that you have just plugged in. So here I am on alpha. I am going to grid home bin directory and I would be ready with the command once everything is up and running. On gamma, I am going to fire up that command to see how things are working. So understand here, on gamma it says the CSS daemon was started in exclusive mode but found an active CSS daemon running on SA alpha, that is on node number 1. That's why I am terminating now and instead starting to join the cluster. So initially it attempts to start the CSSD daemon, which is OCSSD, Oracle Cluster Service Synchronization Daemon, in exclusive mode because it's not aware as of now whether the other nodes are up and running. But the moment it starts in exclusive mode, accesses the voting disk, it finds that there are two alive nodes already up and running. So it terminates itself, which is currently running in exclusive mode, and then starts if by sending a request to one of the master nodes saying allow me to join the cluster. Once the heartbeat reaches to alpha, it will allow that new node's OCSSD daemon to participate in the cluster. Once it starts participating, rest of the configuration will be taken to the conclusion. That is configuring ASM, whatnot. So currently it's participating, it's trying to join in the cluster. Well, the root.sh script from the grid home on the gamma node has just finished. See the message. Configure Oracle grid infrastructure for a cluster. Status successful. So you see automatically ASM instance is up and running. Well, I am going to run now the CLU VFY cluster verify stage post node add for the new node that we have just plugged in. So it is performing the post node addition checks. The next step is, now we have a 3 node cluster, but RDBMS Oracle Home is on only on alpha and beta. We do not have RDBMS Oracle Home running from the new node. Next thing is, following the same process, you need to propagate the RDBMS Oracle Home from alpha or beta to the new node. Again, I am going to invoke add node.sh, but this time not from grid home OUI bin. This time I am going to run it from Oracle Home OUI bin. So here I am on alpha. Once I am done, post check for node addition was successful. So I am logging back in as Oracle, this time setting the env as DB. I am now going to Oracle Home OUI bin, and before I do that, I said Oracle Home opatch ls inventory. I am trying to find out how many nodes installation is this one. So Oracle Home installation is still of 2 nodes. So pretty much doing the same step, that is extending the RDBMS Oracle Home to the new node. Go to the existing node, any of the existing node, and from Oracle Home OUI bin run add node.sh mentioning the details of the new node to be added. If display would have been set, I could have run it without that silent option. So it says invoking OUI. Finally it invokes internally OUI, Oracle Universal Installer. And then it would try to copy over that software to the new node. As of now, the app folder is of 4.3 MB. At some point in time, when once it starts copying, you will start you would see rather the size of app folder is growing. That means the files are getting dumped into this folder. This is where your uh, RDBMS Oracle Home is. So it's growing from 4.6, 4.25 MB, so on and so forth. So this Oracle Home is somewhat bigger than Grid Home. So it will take somewhat more time to copy it from alpha to gamma. So until that copy happens, I would pause this video. So the copy portion has just finished from alpha. It has saved the inventory. Now it's asking you to run from gamma from RDBMS Oracle Home root.sh script. So here is that I'm running it from gamma. That's it. Now if I run opatch ls inventory now, it's showing that my RDBMS home is spread across 3 nodes. But if I try to obtain the details of my database by saying srvctl config database -d test, it shows that my database has only 2 instances, test 1 and test 2. If I check the status, it says you have only 2 instances running, test 1 on alpha, test 2 on beta. This is where the third step comes handy. Add instance to the new node for your database RACDB. In our case it would be test. So from any of the existing nodes, launch DBCA. So here I am on to alpha. Since it's a GUI utility and I want to run it in GUI mode, it could have been run by the way silently as well. I want to preferably run it in GUI mode. I am logging in as Oracle onto alpha. You could have done it against a VNC as well. By logging into the VNC, I am sourcing the database env file. I am exporting my Oracle SID to test 1. I said which DBCA? This is coming from your RDBMS Oracle home bin directory. So I launched DBCA. And while I am doing this, I am also interested in what is that it does to my database. So I am doing a tell-f of my alert log to see what exactly is being done here. This is my observation window. So it says what? I want real application cluster related database options. It says create a database, configure database option, delete a database, manage template, instance management. I want instance management. It says add or delete an instance. I want to add an instance. It says for which database. I want it for test. So it automatically reports you that your instance is up and running on test 1 on alpha, test 2 on beta. Nothing to be done here. I go to the next screen. It automatically tells me what is to be done. So it says, are you planning to add a test 3 instance on SA gamma? To which I said yes. Well, I told you what it's planning to do. It creates a undo table space 3. It's creating of a huge size, which I really don't want it to be, because unnecessarily my IO against that shared storage would be slow. I don't want any more than 15 MB of a file with auto extend as on. So I check automatically extend. So initial size, let it be even smaller, 10 MB. So this is the data file that it's going to add for 10 MB size. And then it's going to add redulog group 5 and 6. What is interesting is they are part of thread 3. So it's creating a 50 MB log file. Let's say finish, and then we'll observe what is that comes up in my alert log. Once I say finish here, it shows me a summary that it's planning to add thread 3. These are the init aura parameters that it is planning to put in my SP file. This is the undo table space that it is planning to create, along with the 2 redo groups for thread 3, which I said okay. Now watch the alert log. So that's adding an instance is in progress now. So see what it has said. Create small file undo tablespace undo tbs3 data file with 10 MB size, the one that we mentioned, auto extend on, so on and so forth. Once that file is created, now it's trying to add a new thread with group 5 and 6 having one member each of 50 MB. So it's adding redo thread 3, after which it must also enable the thread. So it will enable the thread, then it will add the parameters for the third instance into your shared global SP file, and then it will attempt to start it. It will also add the entries of that particular instance into your OCR, at the end of which you should have the third instance up and running on Gamma node. So as of now, the file creation part is in progress. The redo log members, two files of 50 MB each. A stage where it enabled the public thread, and then it has added these parameters for the third instance into the parameter file. Now from this point, any time you would be able to see that the third instance is started. See here, automatically it has started the third instance on the Gamma node. It will also ensure that it adds those details of that instance into your Oracle cluster registry. So it's all done for my alert log. I can log in and query. So I could see instance 1, instance 2, instance 3, test 1, test 2, test 3 respectively running on alpha, beta and gamma, all of version 11.20.20, currently showing status as open. After which I say srvctl config database -d test. All the instances are reportedly shown. I am saying srvctl status database -d test. I can see test 1, test 2, test 3 is running. I can see now U02 grid bin crsctl status resource -t. So my database test.db is all showing status as online for all the instances running on alpha, beta and gamma, reportedly showing status as open. I go back to my GUI wizard. If it has finished, it says do you want to perform any other operation, to which I said no. That's it. I'm closing this one. So back to, this is what we have accomplished so far. Next one is check the status of node addition by saying cluster verify component admprv -o dbconfig -db oracle home and then the name of all the machines. Obviously I am running this from grid home. The oracle home bin directory. So I am running cluster verification this time from RDBMS Oracle Home by saying cluster verify. Instead of stage we are saying now component. admprv -o dbconfig -db -d, the Oracle Home path, which is anyways in my environment variable $Oracle Home, followed by the node names. So it says administrative privileges check has passed. This is where we conclude the node addition.